Good morning. My name is Cesar Solis, and I'm the Director of Constituent Services for Congressman Peters out in San Diego. Thank you for joining us for our Wildfire Awareness webinar. We are joined by FEMA, the California Department of Insurance, and San Diego County Fire to present some resources and information for you on this May Wildfire Awareness Month. The congressman, unfortunately, there were votes scheduled. He is in DC, so we're going to try to get him on a little bit later in the program. But without much more further ado, we're going to pass it over to FEMA to present any resources or information that they would like to present. Veronica?
Great. Thank you very much, Cesar. My name is Veronica Verde. I'm with FEMA Region 9. And thank you for having me on today's Wildfire Awareness webinar. As we know, wildfire season burns millions of acres across the United States every year. FEMA continues to support state-led wildfire fighting efforts, and we do this through some of our grants. Cesar, can you go to the second slide, please? And just to talk a little bit about, while he's pulling up the slides, behind the scenes, when you do see a wildfire, and the wildfire, you're seeing that it's burning, many times behind the scenes, you'll see that FEMA may be providing what we call the Fire Management Assistant Grants, also known as the FMAG. It's available to state, local, and tribal governments. This helps for mitigation and management and control of fires on publicly or privately owned forests or grasslands. And this is if it threatens such destruction that it would constitute a major disaster. The regional administrator, we have 10 regions. We reside in Region 9. Our main office is in Oakland. The regional administrator can approve an FMAG rather quickly to help support with firefighting costs. So the grant is available, so wildfire can be controlled to stop it from spreading and becoming a major disaster that affects infrastructure and also homes. Can we go back 2 slides? Yeah, that one's perfect. Great. So what you should know about wildfire, should it get out of control and it would constitute a disaster declaration. When the wildfire spreads, the governor can request a major disaster declaration. This would need to be approved by the president. The governor could request several programs, individual assistance. This is a grant funding for homeowners and renters affected by the disaster to help with home repair and unmet needs. And then we also have our public assistance program. This provides emergency assistance to save lives and protect property and assist with funding for permanently restoring critical infrastructure. And those that are eligible would be either federally recognized tribes, obviously the states, U.S. territories, and local government. So we have individual assistance. Those are for homeowners and renters, and that's one program that may be available during the disaster declaration, and also public assistance program. So depending on what the wildfire or the disaster affected with that area will depend on what the governor may request. If it's individual assistance or public assistance or both, we have what we call the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. This provides funding to states and tribes and territorial governments, and this can help with hazard mitigation plans and rebuild in a way that reduces or mitigates future disaster losses in their communities. So this grant funding is available after a presidentially declared disaster, and again, it helps to look at rebuilding stronger and safer for future disasters. Next slide, please. So what should you know about a wildfire? Well, one of the things you should know about a wildfire is, where are you going to evacuate? Know your routes and practice. Don't wait for a disaster for you to start practicing where you and your family are going to evacuate to and away from that particular event. You may need to evacuate quickly. Wildfires move fast than you would think. When a wildfire threatens your area, the best action to protect yourself and your family is to evacuate early to avoid being trapped. So don't forget, when you evacuate, take your pets. If you evacuate, you and your family, please also take important papers and also, personal items that you need to take with you before you evacuate from your home. Alerts are also very important when preparing for wildfires. The FEMA app is a good resource to download on your smartphone. It could tell you disasters that are in the area. It could tell you about weather. And of course, if and when there is a federally disaster declaration, it'll also tell you when we're opening up offices, what we call disaster recovery centers. And it can also help with other great resources on how to prepare. So following instructions from your local authorities, they will have more up-to-date information. Again, having emergency supplies at home, at work, and in your car, you never know when or where a disaster may strike. So having those emergency supplies on hand can be critical. Make sure that you check your insurance policies to ensure you have enough coverage. Review your insurance policy or call your insurance representative and discuss what is covered should there be a disaster such as a wildfire. Also, create a communication plan with your family. Involve your whole family, your parents, your children, and even your neighbors. Know how you will all communicate with each other. You can have a family member or friend outside of the state that can serve as your conduit should the family be separated during a disaster. Again, practice. Keep those discussions alive before a disaster strikes. Follow instructions from local authorities. They will have, again, the more up-to-date information. Ensure you have needed resources to listen to emergency alerts, such as a battery or hand-cranked handheld radio, or even solar chargers for your radio and cell phones to keep up with the most up-to-date emergency information. Next slide, please. Great. So again, plan ahead. Store supplies now so you could grab them quickly if you need to evacuate. Make a list of things that you need or want to take if you have to leave your home quickly. It's never too early to start preparing your home and your family for a wildfire. Alerts and warnings, those are great. You can get those on your smartphones. Sign up to receive text or email alerts about emergencies like wildfires from your local Office of Emergency Management. Timely information on wildfires can save your life and property. Also, look at protecting your property before wildfire, maintaining your lawn or removing combustible debris from around your home. Protect yourself and your property, have defensible space. And also by using fire-resistant materials for construction, renovation, and landscaping to protect your property from a wildfire. Don't use lawnmowers, for example, that can create sparks outside of a dry, windy day. And clear your area of your homes of leaves or dead vegetation and other combustible debris to reduce sources of fuel. Evacuations, I talked a little bit about that earlier, but again, I can't say it enough. Be prepared to evacuate if a wildfire occurs by knowing your family's evacuation plan, either by car or by foot. Remember, there are 5 P's that I always try to remember and also let my audience know is, people, prescriptions, papers, personal needs, and priceless items. Those are the 5 P's that you should think about when you're looking at evacuation, getting a little emergency kit together and having some of those 5 P's in your emergency bag. Know and practice, again, your evacuation plan before a wildfire. And when an evacuation notice is issued for a wildfire, take prompt action to maximize your survival chances. Communication, many communities have text or emergency alerting systems for emergency notifications. And to find out what alerts are available in your area, do an internet search with your town, city, or county name and type in the word alerts. And it should come up with a lot of different resources for you. Sign up group text lists so you can communicate with several people at the same time during emergencies. So a group text list would be really helpful if you need to send out a quick emergency notification to your family that you're evacuating and where you're going to. Make and share your family's wildfire emergency plan. Go to ready.gov/wildfires to obtain all this information that I'm discussing today and much more from we have other disasters there where you can learn how do you prepare. Talk to your neighbors about wildfire safety plan, how your neighborhood could work together before and after a wildfire. And also talk to your kids about making an emergency plan. Again, if you go to ready.gov, we have ready.gov/kids. Have your kids partake and help you in your planning efforts, especially if they may not be with you during a disaster. Cellular networks may be congested after wildfire, but text messages may get through. Teach loved ones how to text wildfire safety messages. And, again, we have a lot of, resources within our ready.gov. So just wanted to say, please go back to ready.gov and look at all the resources that we have. Next slide, please. So here are additional resources. One is download the FEMA app. The FEMA app has a lot of resources. And then, of course, there are videos and plans in our ready.gov. Remember, in the face of disasters, preparedness is not a choice. It's the ultimate lifeline for safeguarding what matters most. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Veronica, for those resources. And we can now turn it over to Ryan Silva with CalFire San Diego County Fire.
Good morning. Thank you. Did you want to go ahead and launch that PowerPoint there, Caesar?
Yeah, I can do that. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. Veronica, that was amazing. Thank you. I'll try not to duplicate. We have very similar information to send out. I'll try to not duplicate and bore people, so I appreciate it. So good morning again. Thanks for having me. Like Veronica said, I'm the deputy chief here for CalFire San Diego County Fire Protection District. I am actually in charge of our division of what we call community risk reduction. So it's a very large program where we incorporate our law enforcement. So we have all of our CalFire police underneath my umbrella. We also have our pre-fire that I'll explain here in a little bit, that basically takes care of all the fuel reduction here in the county. And then we have my administrative staff who helps us with grants and things of that nature, which I'll kind of explain also. The last piece of it is our business inspectors. So we mainly deal with, rural county. We have some of your areas that the District 50 is in, like Rancho Santa Fe and things of that nature. San Marcos was state response area. But our business inspectors go out and make sure that all the businesses are up to code, and make sure that, new things that are being built are following the code, and make sure everything's safe. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Caesar. Thank you. So community risk reduction, what we've launched is a cohesive fire strategy. So the 4 elements, which I kind of explained to you just now, they fall into these 4 categories. We have community engagement, so that we can basically engage with the communities and keep them safer. We have defensible space and home hardening, which Veronica touched on. We have our community fuel reduction, and then also we have our evacuation planning. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So with our community engagement, we have 2 public information officers, actually 3. And then I actually just hired one to come into here with me in community risk reduction. So I technically have 4 public information officers. You'll see 2 of them on the news, kind of giving out the engagement. They were supposed to be here today, but like you said, it's Awareness Month. So they're actually extremely busy delivering the message throughout the county. So some of the things that they're engaged with my community engagement is our fire safe councils, which I'll explain quickly here shortly. What they do is we create community wildfire protection plans, the CWPPs. So you'll see a map that I'll show later, and you'll see all the fire safe councils that we have in the county. Those are communities that are coming together and they kind of make up their own boundary, and they figure out as a community how to make their community safer from wildfire, whether it be chipping events, making homes hardened, doing DSI, things of that nature, and they go after grant money together. Our community engagement consists of WUI classes. So that's the Wildland Urban Interface. And we kind of teach communities how to be safe and be prepared. Much like Veronica was saying, we go through all the same things that she was talking about, how to make people just aware and have, their evacuation routes and things of that nature. The chipper events, what we'll do is marry up with the Fire Safe Council. Like, for instance, this Saturday, we're going to be in Hummel, And whoever in Hamul wants to come and drop off their trimmings from them clearing their defensible space inspections, we actually have a chipper, and we have a chipper bin truck, and we have a staff that goes out there typically on Saturdays, and we'll chip all that stuff and we'll take it away, and we actually give it to organic farms so it can be reused. Residential Knox box. This is a program that we do for elderly folks that qualify. This is a box that we'll actually put on the door, and our fire engine will have the key for that. So once they open that box, that's actually that homeowner's key to get in their front door. That way, you know, back when I was on a fire engine, that was our favorite thing to do, is go kick doors in, right? So that way we don't do damage anymore. This residential Knox box programs helped, you know, save that. Also, we have the business and gate Knox boxes, a pool alarm program that we pushed out last year. It's a pool alarm that, you know, it kind of goes with our safety. You know, it has an alarm in the house, and then once the water is disrupted, that alarm will go off. And, you know, we've had a few drownings here in the county, which is very sad. So we're trying to alleviate that. Also, we have our open houses and fire stations to kind of introduce the public to our folks in the field, and then our CERT teams. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So our defensible space program, right now, San Diego County Fire Protection District has grant money. We try to hire 10 DSI inspectors for defensible space inspectors. We have in just our area of the rural county, that doesn't include Rancho Santa Fe, San Marcos, we have over 47,000 homes that we want to inspect. Last year, we were able to get 30,280 inspections. Currently, we're at about 2,000. We're getting geared up for the spring to get everybody to get their defensible space inspections done. Like I said, we have 10 to 8 people on grant funded. We have 2 CalFire permanent staff, 1 AB 38 inspector that deals with the real estate. When new inspections, you know, when a new home is sold, they have to have a DSI inspection. And then the fire engines, we have over 40 fire engines in our rural protection. That includes state and county engines. They're all required to do 200 inspections themselves, and they do them just around their fire stations. So that's the number we're always trying to shoot for, is a little bit over 38,000 per year. There's also a DSAP program, which we partner with Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County. That's the Fire Safe Council, basically, of San Diego County, that we partner with to do all the CWPPs like I spoke of earlier. The Defensible Safe Assistance Program is another program where people possibly, you know, of lower income or elder that aren't allowed to, you know, or can't afford or can't physically do the clearance, like you see on this image here, the Zone 1 and Zone 2. So if they apply for this program, RCD for short, they'll go out there and actually do the program if you qualify. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So the home hardening program, we're trying to educate people on how to harden your home, which Veronica touched on very briefly. So the 0 to 5, not having any vegetation. You can see there's no vegetation from 0 to 5 feet from anybody's home. You want to harden, you know, with amber vents. You also want to have different types of siding and different roofs, patios, decks, things of that nature that we will educate people on, just to kind of follow the new building code. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Some of the community fuel reduction that we do, which is our pre-fire shop, you can see there on the top right-hand side. That's one of our only inmate crews actually in the county. We have paid staff now. We have 3 fire centers and 2 inmate camps in the county, which actually reduce fuel. So we do vegetation management and fuel breaks throughout the county, also doing roadside clearance and things of that nature. The bottom right picture there is a VMP burn. So that's where we actually go out and burn vegetation. In fact, we're doing one tomorrow because the weather's perfect right now. There's no wind, it's a little bit moist. Nothing's really dried out yet, but things will still burn right now. So we're actually out in East County. You might see some smoke out there out in Ramona. In that area, we're going to burn about 40 acres. What that does is, you know, it creates a buffer for if we have the big fires like we had, you know, in 03 and 06, the cedar fire and things of that nature, you know, maybe the fire will just be east of that and it'll hit that buffer, or that's an area that no longer a fire can start in, right? Because we took care of it. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So some of the mechanized equipment that we have is these 2, the top right there, we bought 2 mini excavators, and San Diego County Fire Protection District bought those. Right what they're doing there is they're cutting an access road. So we have a lot of truck trails out in the county, as you can imagine, with all the mountains that we have and access roads and things of that nature, which get overgrown. Well, we want to open those up and make sure that if there is a fire, we can get our engines back there. Make sure that we get access so that we can prevent the fire from coming into like District 50, correct? So we want to keep everything east in case we do have those Santa Ana winds. And this is our new little pride and joy that we bought down here. We bought it about a year and a half ago. We call it the Flail Bot. It's actually like a large remote control masticator, just like the one up top, but it is remote control. So we have two people that can actually do that. And what we do is we use that, which we call Thing 4, because we have Thing 1 and Thing 2, like from Dr. Seuss. So we have about 5 of our little things now that we do, and this is number 4. So the the flail bot will actually go out to old fuel breaks that the crews were at, and they can go and masticate that. And it's just a two-person thing where we have one backing up just in case they do spark a fire, and then one running the remote control, basically. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Here's some of the other equipment. I was talking about the chipper event. On the right-hand side, you have our chipper bin truck that we purchased last year. The chipper that we just bought came in last week, so that'll tow behind it, and we'll go ahead and clean up the vegetation for people that they drop off. On the top left-hand side, this is an old water tender that we converted, and you can see on the right side of that water tender, there's a spray bar rack. We've been partnering with a company. SDG&E has actually been one of our partners in helping us, and what we do is we spray this roadside retardant 10 feet on roadways, and we only do, I shouldn't say only, we actually do 40 miles per year. We're getting ready to start now because that window of opportunity, things are starting to dry out. It's becoming spring. We wanted to wait until the rains were done, and so what happens here is that sprays about 10 feet, and that is good for 6 months or 2 to 3 inches of rain. So that'll help us prevent fires. And what we do is we look in the past where fires have started throughout the county, and we try to hit those areas. This will be our 4th year in a row that we're doing it. We're pretty excited about it. And it is all ecologically safe. We get a lot of questions on that with the environmental, and it is very safe. It's basically the same stuff that you see the airplanes dropping on major fires, but it has a little bit different substance in it, and it doesn't have the pink in there because we don't need to really know where it's at. On the bottom left-hand side is actually the fuels crew that's assigned to myself. It's a crew of 11, and they do a lot of the dirty work that goes on throughout the county. You can go to the next slide, Caesar. Thank you. So something very important is the evacuation corridors. That top right-hand picture there is Interstate 15 back in either during the Cedar Fire or one of the major fires. As you can see there, basically Interstate 15 was shut down. So like FEMA was talking about, kind of know your evacuation corridors. So if you look at the middle picture on the left, you'll see those are all of our fire safe councils. And then if you look on the right, this is one of the fire safe councils. And those green lines right there are evacuation corridors. And the reason why I bring that up is because when we create the CWPP, you can see there where it says green and yellow, primary, alternate, contingency and emergency, and temporary refuge areas. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors about 3 years ago asked us to go ahead and cut 20 feet of evacuation corridors throughout the county. So what we've started with, and we're about a year into it now, so it's still in its inception phase, and we're really working hard on cleaning up the evacuation corridors. So each one of these fire safe councils, we take that primary route that we've identified, and you can see there we use local government. We work with sheriff, our fire safe councils, RCD, anybody else that sits at the table with us, SDG&E, and we've been cutting those evacuation corridors. Currently, since we started last year, we've cut about 300 miles. We have about 6 grants coming in right now. That's for San Diego County Fire Protection District. And we plan on opening about 1,000 miles, hopefully, in the next couple of years. And then we've figured out a maintenance cycle so that we can continue to do that. Caesar, I didn't check my time. How am I doing on time?
You're pretty good. You have about 5 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So evacuation orders and evacuation warnings, we were kind of FEMA was speaking about that earlier. So when we have a major fire, we'll put in an order. or a warning, I apologize. So we'll pick an area and we have our own maps where sheriff or CHP and all of our law enforcement sits with us at the tailgate at that major fire or that fire that started, and we'll put in a warning. And that'll go through, I'll show you a slide here earlier or later where you download the app and you'll get the warning. And that's just to kind of warn everybody there's a fire in your area. Now, if you get an evacuation order, you're going to want to make sure that you get out of there. Some people have a tendency to stay. I worked up north, up in Chico, in Butte County, and a lot of people didn't want to evacuate because they wanted to protect their home. So an order is basically telling you you should be getting out of there. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Caesar. So this is kind of the fire safe councils, and these are the roads that we actually cut with a 20-foot roadside clearance. I put up this spaghetti noodled mess on purpose. So I wanted everybody to kind of see the boundaries of our CWPPs and the roads that we're cutting. You can see some of them are actually in your district. We have a little bit there in Escondido and a little bit in Rancho Santa Fe and San Marcos. So we do work with everybody, to make sure that these evacuation corridors are getting cut, and there's 20-foot roadside clearance and a maintenance cycle. And again, everything's been CEQA'd by a professional company, so we have CEQA in place. I think the next slide is my last one, I believe. So. Oh, here's the website. So if you would like to download alertsandiego.org, that's where you're going to get all of your information. You'll get quite a bit out of there. SDG&E, I also wanted to touch on their PSP, where they have a power shutoff. So most of you have probably heard of this. A lot of it's out in the East County that we deal with. Some fires have started from power lines being blown into the ground. So what happens is SDG&E has they're able to test the wind and be able to see how fast it's blowing. And if it reaches a certain miles per hour, they'll shut down the power. That way it makes it safer. So, but I definitely encourage you to download the alertsandiego.org. And I think that's the last of my slides there, Caesar. So if anybody has any questions. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Silva, for those resources and that information. And the Congressman has joined us. So we're actually going to toss it to him for some remarks.
I'm sorry I got tripped up by votes, but I really appreciate everyone being here. It is Wildfire Awareness Month, and I had the experience, Ryan, of being on the City Council during the 2003 fires. I guess that was the Cedar fires, and was really pretty concerned about how unready we were at the city. We really turned it around. And I think also the good thing is that a lot of folks who were affected by that in Scripps Ranch and Tierra Santa, and then later in 2007 in Rancho Bernardo, kind of got the message to take charge of their own affairs and be as prepared as they could. So it's really important that we are aware. I really appreciate you being available and so communicative. And we'll keep trying to get the word out about how to be ready. We've been lucky to have some wet months, but we know that just creates more fuel, and we want to be ready. So thanks again for all your work. Thanks to FEMA and CalFire and the county and all the folks who participated.
Thank you, Congressman. And with that, we are going to turn it over to Sharon Smith and Andrea Valdez with the California Department of Insurance for some resources. Go ahead. And you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Congressman Peters, for those remarks. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Sharon Smith, and I'm here with Andrea Valdez. We're both outreach analysts with the California Department of Insurance. Our department has been meeting with homeowners throughout the state, and it's clear that we are at an insurance crossroads. So I want to talk a little bit here today about what the department is doing and how we actually got here. So before we address the reforms and actions that we've taken to date, I want to explain how the insurance marketplace got to the place that it's at. Natural disasters and global inflation are creating stress on insurance markets and increased insured losses and costs worldwide, like never before. And this isn't just happening here, it's happening in every state. Every state is experiencing these to some degree. The increased cost of rebuilding supplies, materials, parts, along with labor shortages, is making insurance incredibly expensive and hard to find. Reinsurance, which is insurance for insurance companies, is also harder to find as catastrophes grow worldwide. And so, as risk is increasing, as costs are increasing, insurance companies are protecting their obligations to current consumers by limiting new business and contracting their market share. So since Commissioner Lara took office in 2019, we've been consistently monitoring and analyzing the status and direction of insurance availability trends. So we've seen that the FAIR plan has doubled to 3% of the California market, becoming the insurer of first resort as opposed to the insurer of last resort as it's meant and designed to be. The FAIR plan is not a state agency. The FAIR plan isn't sold by the California Department of Insurance. It's actually funded by insurance companies. It's a pool of all of the funds from all the admitted insurers in California. So a growing California FAIR plan is a problem because FAIR plan policyholders are required to pay more for a lot less coverage than they would on a private company. And concentrating the highest risk properties under the FAIR plan increases the chance that the FAIR plan isn't going to be able to pay out if there is a catastrophic disaster in that area. So I think it's really important to understand that point, that if the FAIR plan goes insolvent, that insurance companies are on the hook for those unpaid FAIR plan losses. And this hasn't happened in nearly 30 years, but that uncertainty is what's driving these insurance companies to further limit coverage to some of our most vulnerable at-risk communities in California. So a growing FAIR plan creates that risk for the entire insurance marketplace. So as a direct result of these growing risks, concentrated in California, the credit agency AM Best has downgraded the outlooks for top 12 companies like State Farm, AAA, and Mercury. That's why you could see them limiting policies more and more. And a really critical fact to know is that unlike public utilities, electricity, things like that, which are required to provide coverage to residents and businesses, under Proposition 103, insurance companies can legally refuse to write insurance unless they're able to meet 100% of consumers' claims, cover their expenses, and earn a fair return. So if they're not able to cover every single policy that they write, they will not write those policies. So that's why they're playing it a little bit even more safe. And you're seeing, again, those a lot more cancellations, you're seeing the non-renewals. And so everyone is harmed if an insurance company goes insolvent because it can't pay its claims. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So again, a little California context. This slide shows you that 7 out of the 12 insurance companies have either paused or restricted their new policies, even though most of them have pending or approved rate increases, showing that the problem isn't just that they need to increase prices, and it's not going to be solved by just increasing prices. So you can see State Farm is asking right now for a 28.1% increase, Farmers 17.7% increase. And just because they're asking for these increases doesn't mean that they will be approved. But you could see even with these rate increases being filed right now, they're still pausing policies. They're still not writing to homeowners. All right. And over the past 10 years, insurance companies have done far worse in California than nationally, almost by every measure. So the direct incurred loss from 2012 to 2021, countrywide, it was 59.7%, but the losses in California were about 74%. Underwriting profit countrywide for the last 10 years, 3.6%, while in California, it's been negative 13.1%. Direct profit on the insurance transactions countrywide 4%, in California -6%, and the direct return on net worth countrywide's been about 7%, while in California it hasn't even been a percentage. So during these past years in California, obviously we've experienced 9 out of the 10 most devastating wildfires in our state's history. So it makes sense why this is why the numbers are presented this way. But as a result, we're faced with a really tough question, and it's can consumers get the insurance that they need? And we know today the answer is generally no. And because climate change impacts are accelerating, we do need to take actions that expand insurance availability. So now I'm going to pass it on to Andrea, who's going to discuss the steps our office has taken already to address this growing wildfire risk in California.
Thank you, Sharon. So to reduce the risk of major losses in the industry, Commissioner Lara introduced the Safer from Wildfires framework. So this is a 3-step system to protect your home, surroundings, and community, which in turn provides consumers with discounts and transparency about risk rating. So under this regulation, we expect to see more businesses and homeowners and communities making investments in wildfire safety, greater community resilience, reduced loss from wildfires, and more insurance coverage for mitigated properties. So it's important to know, and I think we've already said this before, CDI does not have the authority to force insurers to write coverage. So this regulation attacks the root cause of non-renewals, which is wildfire risk, and it will make Californians safer. And with accurate pricing of insurance, we expect to see more insurance options for people through a competitive market. Next slide. So the first step of our Safer from Wildfires framework, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So this is going to be a Class A fire rated roof, fire resistant vents, multi-pane windows, and a minimum of 6-inch non-combustible vertical clearance at the bottom of the exterior surface of the structure. Next slide. Step 2 is going to be protect the immediate surroundings. So that's going to be the clearing of the vegetation and debris from under those decks, clearing of vegetation, debris, mulch, and any and all movable combustible materials from within 5 feet of the building being evaluated. Incorporation of only non-combustible materials into that portion of any improvements to the property of the building being evaluated, and that's within 5 feet of that building. And removal of combustible structures, sheds, any other outbuildings from the immediate surroundings of the home to at least a distance of 30 feet. Next slide. And finally, step 3 is really a community effort. So this is an effort to obtain a community level mitigation. And this is most likely going to involve at least one, if not more, local government agencies. So that's going to be fire, emergency services, planning. Community level mitigation designates includes the FRRC by the Board of Forestry and a FireWise USA site in good standing. So the FireWise program is a nationwide program created by the National Fire Protection Association. And actually, California has more than 700 FireWise USA communities, and that's with more forming. And it is an important part of California's effort to ensure communities are prepared against wildfires. So something that I really emphasize in part 3 of our Safer from Wildfires, it's a community effort. You know what I mean? A lot of people, when we go out to these events, they'll say, well, I've done everything to my home, but my neighbor hasn't done anything to their home. And again, I've heard questions from the fire department. It's a community effort. You know, if you have to go to your neighbor's house, maybe, you know, it's an older couple, but to assist them and see what they need. And I know there's programs out there as well to help with this. And another thing is we do have the California Fair Plan offering insurance discounts. This was this past summer. And CDI expects to have other companies approved by the end of the year. The Fair Plan has already offered a 10% discount on policies participating in a FireWise community since May of 2018. And now the Fair Plan is actually offering 2 more wildfire hardening discounts. And so that's one for protecting the structure and another one for protecting the immediate surroundings of the dwelling. Now, when applied, these discounts will reduce the wildfire portion of the policy's premium by 10% and 5% respectively. Now, depending on your wildfire level of risk, this can be a large component of your overall premium. So this is something you definitely want to contact your broker to find out what this means for your premium, how you qualify, and when you could receive that discount. Now, CDI and the Fair Plan did reach an agreement to increase the commercial coverage limit to $20 million per location. This was actually effective as of November 1st, 2023. And this addresses the greater needs for recreational youth camps, homeowners associations, wineries for additional coverage. And the business owner's policy limit increased to 20 million it took effect no later than December 14th. So that did go into effect. Another thing I would like to discuss is that most people don't know that insurance companies assign a risk score to your home or business. Now, everybody wants this information because if you know the risks on your property, then you can take action to reduce them and make you and your neighbors safer. So the regulation requires insurance companies to give you a wildfire risk score for your property. And they have to tell you how this created this score and what factors went into this score as well. So the wildfire risk score classification must be provided to you at the following times. And that's going to be when you apply for a new policy, that's going to be within 15 days. Before you renew a policy, that's at least 45 days. Before you're non-renewed, that's at least 75 days. And when you complete mitigation on your property and request a revised score, and that's within 30 days. Now, creating right of appeal, the regulation, it's giving power back to consumers. And if you're not satisfied with the response, that's when the Department of Insurance is here to help. We've already had consumers coming in and saying, you know, I really don't like this risk score. Why did they give me this risk score? Contact our hotline and we'll be available to assist you with that. And with that, back to Sharon.
Right. So in September, Commissioner Lara announced the California's Sustainable Insurance Strategy. And it's a comprehensive plan to modernize and reform our insurance market with 3 interlocking goals. 1, making insurance available to Californians. 2, creating a resilient insurance market. And 3, protecting communities from climate change. So these are the executive actions and reforms that the commissioner is taking. We will be increasing availability of insurance in wildfire distress areas. Using our prior approval rate authority, insurance companies will write no less than 85% of homes and businesses in wildfire distress areas. Now, these aren't defined yet, the wildfire distress areas, but we are going to be using a data-driven approach to determine what those areas are, as opposed to just looking at a map, seeing what those historically have been, and using that. There's going to be a lot more factors that go into place. And this is a historic agreement between the department and insurance companies. So it's a huge reason why we're really going out into communities, talking to them about this, because this could be incredibly can make a huge impact for them. So we will also be reversing the trend of a growing FAIR plan and closing that insurance gap. The second part of that plan is going to be to return the current FAIR plan policyholders back to traditional insurance, with first priority to those that have hardened their homes and businesses following the Safer from Wildfires regulation that Andrea just went over. The next important element of the plan directly addresses the climate risk. So the commissioner will introduce regulations to utilize forward-looking catastrophe models, prioritizing wildfire safety, mitigation, and transparency. Effectively addressing climate change requires new risk assessment strategies that keep insurance available. Currently, insurance companies are using historical data, so like the last 20 years of what's happened, what losses have occurred in California. And as we know, the governor, the legislator has been making huge investments into wildfire safety, with home hardening, with fuel reduction, with prescribed fires, as we just learned about. So there's a lot of changes that have happened within these last 20 years, and homeowners, insurance companies, and now we're realizing that those factors need to be put into underwriting, into current rates. So that is where that catastrophe modeling comes in. And we already have a very clear template for how to reduce wildfire risks, with the Safer from Wildfires regulation, requiring insurance discounts and increasing transparency on wildfire risk scores. We're going to be taking that input from the public and the public's interest in safety and ensure access first, as we did in the process of creating Safer from Wildfires. As another important element of stabilizing our marketplace in the face of climate change, we will also be exploring California-only reinsurance costs. So reinsurance or insurance for insurance companies. Reinsurance is a tool that many insurance companies are using to manage their climate risk and continuing to write policies. But we want to make sure that we underscore that Californians will not be paying the cost of hurricanes and fires and floods across the nation or around the world. We're looking at California only reinsurance costs. Under Commissioner Lara's agreement, the companies wishing to use these new risk assessment tools must agree to increase and maintain their writing in those wildfire distress areas. So that's that 85% requirement I was just talking about, increasing writing and removing people, from the FAIR plan. And then turning to the FAIR plan, we'll continue modernizing the FAIR plan by expanding commercial coverage limits to $20 million per structure, which would close a lot of those coverage gaps for HOAs, affordable housing, and infill developments that are having a really hard time currently finding coverage. And the last thing I want to highlight is our 1-800 number. It's 1-800-927-HELP. There's also a lot of information on insurance.ca.gov. If you do still have questions about your policy, wildfire risk scores, we have insurance specialists, experts that are able to answer those questions. They'll go through your policy with you, and they usually are very responsive between the hours of 9 to 5. But if you call outside of those hours, they should get to you within that week. So that's all I have for now. I'm going to pass it back to you, Caesar.
Great, thank you so much for that presentation. If there are any questions for our presenters, go ahead and drop them in the chat, but I did have just one question for each agency, if you don't mind. The first question is for Veronica. It is sort of my understanding that individual assistance is not always included as part of a disaster declaration. Is that true? Because I recall sometimes there's been some disaster declarations in San Diego County, and people come to our office looking for some assistance with some damage that they might have had. It's my understanding that individual assistance has to be included in that disaster declaration.
You are correct, Caesar. So what happens at the local level after a disaster, local government will do their own preliminary damage assessments. They'll look to see what damages, is it critical infrastructure or if it's homes. That information is given to the governor. The governor looks at that information and either is going to request a joint preliminary damage assessment with FEMA, SBA, local government. And from that, we'll look at all the damages. That information is provided to the governor, and then he makes a request whether he's going to request for individual assistance or public assistance or for both.
Right, thank you. And Deputy Chief Silva, you mentioned about getting a DSI inspection. How does one within your service area go about getting one of those DSI inspections?
So we have our defensible space inspectors that actually go out and they're assigned to a battalion. So as I keep mentioning, we're kind of rural county. We deal with the East County. Basically, I consider it east of the 15, if you will. 8 battalions. So we have 8 inspectors. We have 1 assigned per battalion. And it's their job, like I said, also with the fire engines, to do the defensible space inspections in that area. If you want one, you can go ahead and email myself, which I would put, in contact. And then that information would go to our law enforcement captains that I have that work underneath me, and they would send out the DSI inspector to actually do it. So the plan is to get to everybody's house, though, every year to make sure it's being done. We deal with a lot of, complaints from neighbors and things of that nature. I mean, that's half the job that we do, is chasing that type of stuff. So, but if somebody did want to get it done, just, you could email me and I can put them in touch with the right person. So.
Great, thank you so much. And Sharon, this is for your agency. You mentioned the wildfire risk score, and you did mention it, but I was just wondering if you could let us know more about the process. Is this something that someone would request of their insurance company?
Yeah, you can request this from your insurance company or your broker. And Andrea went over the 4 times that you're able to do that: when you're getting your policy renewed, when you're looking for a new policy, when you haven't been when you've been canceled, or you've done some sort of mitigation on your home. So all these wildfire risk scores are going to vary from insurance company to insurance company.
Right.
Some of them might be on a 1 through 12 score, some might be on a 1 through 5. But yes, it is part of the law that they have to, especially if they've denied you, give you a reason why, give you some strategies on how to mitigate your home or harden it to potentially be insurable. So those are things that they do have to disclose.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I am not seeing any more questions in the chat. So if you all don't mind, I will give you all 10 minutes back of your day. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Thanks. Allie, you can close the meeting.